Now available in paperback and Kindle Unlimited. Isis, Escape from Transylvania. The goddess next door and John Haynes must escape a horde of vampires on the hunt in this horror-filled Isis series adventure. Get Isis, Escape from Transylvania in paperback and Kindle Unlimited today. When I take a critical look at Star Wars and Marvel's publishing division, I'm clearly seeing a pattern as to why both brands are in a state of decline. And the pattern that I'm seeing emerging as related to why both Marvel and Star Wars are in a state of decline has to do with the people who have been put in charge of both Marvel and Star Wars at Disney. Now, when it comes down to Disney, Disney thought that they could put female executives in charge of both the Star Wars brand and the Marvel Publishing division, and that they could put any female in charge of these divisions, and that these divisions would be able to grow. However, when you take a critical look at the backgrounds of both Sana Amanat at Marvel and Kathleen Kennedy at Star Wars, you clearly see that neither female is qualified to manage both of these brands, and because of their mismanagement, both brands are in complete decline. Now, when it comes down to Star Wars, Kathleen Kennedy has been in charge of the Star Wars brand ever since Lucasfilm was sold to Disney. Now, your Kathleen Kennedy was primarily an executive producer in most cases, and she handled the money, so she did not really understand how the business side of Star Wars worked, nor did she understand what the Star Wars lore meant to fans. And because she did not understand this, she decided to go out of her way to push her feminist agenda in Star Wars. And as a result, the new trilogy that she has helped produce is one of the worst Star Wars products ever to be produced in the history of the 40-year-old brand. And the most recent film she had helped produce, Solo, a Star Wars movie, was the first box office flop for the Star Wars brand. And I believe that the reason why the Star Wars brand is in decline is because they hired a grossly unqualified woman to run the Lucasfilm division, and because this woman did not have any passion for Star Wars, she did not understand the history of Star Wars, and she did not care about the history, mythology, and lore of Star Wars. This is why we got uninspired films that really did not capture the spirit of Star Wars or paid respect to the history and heritage of the whole Star Wars mythology and the Star Wars lore. Your Kathleen Kennedy was not a fan of Star Wars. She just was somebody who was picked because she was female and they wanted to meet some diversity quota. And because she was there hired to meet a diversity quota, your Kathleen Kennedy thought she could use the Star Wars brand as a way to push her narrative for feminism in a new Star Wars trilogy. Because when you take a critical look at the Rey character is nothing more than a Mary Sue who represents your Kathleen Kennedy. And because she represents your Kathleen Kennedy, this is why the new trilogy did not have a character transformation arc like the original episodes 4, 5, and 6, where we saw characters like Luke Skywalker grow from boyhood into manhood, your Han Solo go from a ruthless scoundrel into a compassionate man, and your Princess Leia grow from a strong woman to being a leader who looked out for all the people around her. Those character transformation arcs were the result of George Lucas and many screenwriters working together to maintain a vision that was consistent through 3 films. But when we take a look at Kathleen Kennedy's vision, it's a really jumbled vision, and it's a jumbled vision because she's trying to push a group of characters no one likes on people, and she's trying to push an agenda on people based on gynocentrism. And because she wants to push this gynocentric narrative, many Star Wars fans are balking at her films and are very angry because when they look at films like Last Jedi, they see characters like Luke Skywalker compromised and acting out of character, and they see characters like Han Solo killed off in ignominious fashions, and that has turned off many Star Wars fans and has led to the Star Wars brand falling in decline. Now, when it comes down to the Marvel Publishing division, The Marvel Publishing Division is also in a state of decline because they've hired a grossly unqualified female to run part of the Marvel division. Now, Marvel's Vice President of Content and Character Development, Sana Amanat, is also grossly unqualified to run the Marvel division. Now, when it comes down to your Sana Amanat, her background really isn't from comics, science fiction, or fantasy, and she primarily comes from a platform based on politics. And because her platform is primarily political, this is why she's always trying to push a false diversity narrative in her comics, and her comics always have this whole political agenda throughout them. Now, when it comes down to your vice president of content and character development, I would believe that your vice president of content and character development should be primarily focused on making sure that characters remain consistent from story to story and making sure that character development maintains that character's consistency and integrity from story to story in the same way an editor in chief like Jim Shooter and a other editor like a Mark Grunwald would back in the 1980s, because back in the 1980s your Mark Grunwald, when he was alive, your Mark Grunwald made sure that every character remained consistent from story to story. Moreover, he made sure to understand the Marvel Universe and the Marvel Universe lore so that every reader got the same consistent story, whether a character like Hawkeye appeared in Avengers, or he appeared in Iron Man, or a character like Spider-Man appeared from his own book, Amazing Spider-Man, to interacting with the Avengers. And because Mark Grunwald had extensive knowledge of the Marvel Universe, they were able to utilize even the most obscure characters in the Marvel Universe and made sure that their appearances were consistent from their stories in the 1960s all the way up until the early 1990s. And that's what I think a vice president of content and character development would be primarily focused on, making sure that the characters of a brand like Marvel remain consistent in their appearances. And this is why I believe your Sana Amanat is grossly unqualified for the position, because when we take a critical look at how she has managed the Marvel brand, she has not made sure that the content has remained consistent from one Marvel issue to the next, and she has not really developed those old popular characters in ways that enables new readers to access them. No, when it comes down to your Sana Amanat, she doesn't care about the catalog of Marvel's thousands of characters and maintaining their consistency, so new readers can find these characters just as entertaining as older readers. No, what this woman wants to do is push a false narrative regarding diversity. And instead of giving us the Steve Rogers Captain America everybody grew up with, she wants to give us Sam Wilson, the Falcon, as Captain America. She wants to give us a female Thor, a black female Iron Man, and she wants to give us token diversity characters in the place of main characters that everyone grew up knowing and loving. And she believes that this was the way to push diversity. Unfortunately, because of Sana Amanat's diversity campaign, Marvel Comics sales have gone into decline, and many comic fans want nothing to do with Marvel Comics anymore. And that's really sad, because what happened due to Sana Amanat's mismanagement was that a generation of potential comic fans missed out on comic books, and Marvel Comics missed an opportunity to reach an entire new generation of comic fans. And that's all due to this one female being grossly unqualified for the position, not understanding the duties of the position, and not having a vision for developing Marvel's characters and making them accessible for the next generation of readers in the 21st century. Now, when it comes down to your Sana Amanat, this is a woman who is more interested in identity politics, and because she's so caught up in identity politics, she's caught up in trying to push another Mary Sue character. Now, this Mary Sue Kamala Khan is nothing more than Sana Amanat in a Ms. Marvel costume. And she's cosplaying as Ms. Marvel in many of these comics. And that's what, just like Kathleen Kennedy is cosplaying as Rey in Star Wars. And they're using these avatars to push their identity politics and push their agendas, as they call themselves trying to push agendas that really counter the missions of your Star Wars and your Marvel comics. And because these women are pushing their feminist agendas and their gynocentric agendas, they are driving these brands straight into the ground. And because they are driving these brands straight into the ground, many comic fans are alienated by these two women and their lack of vision and their lack of creativity, and they don't want to associate with the brands of Star Wars or Marvel's publishing division. And that's all due to these females being in positions that they got, not based on merit, but based on diversity quotas. Now, I look at both of these women, and again, they clearly show me that they are not qualified for their positions. Your Kathleen Kennedy has shown this by her lack of respect and lack of regard for the Star Wars mythology and the Star Wars lore. When I look at what she's presented on the screen of the film she's in charge in, there is no love for Star Wars, there is no passion for Star Wars. None of the heart and spirit of George Lucas's films are on the screen of her films. And when I look at Sana Amanat's Marvel, I don't see any of the passion in the pages of the comic she is supposed to be in charge of as related to content and character development. I don't see anything as related to the spirit of a Marvel comic. I don't see anything as related to the heart of a Marvel comic. I don't see anything related to the soul of a Marvel comic, or anything related to anything Stan Lee established or Jack Kirby established back in the 1960s, as they were laying the foundation for the Marvel Universe with Fantastic Four #1, Amazing Fantasy 15, and many other great Marvel comics, which laid the ground foundation for the Marvel Universe. No, I don't see any of that vision as related to Marvel in Sana Amanat's comics. No, all I see is someone who wants to try to use comics as a platform for pushing a political agenda, in the same way I see Kathleen Kennedy trying to use Star Wars as a platform for pushing a political agenda. And what makes these women both grossly unqualified for these positions is that both of these women, again, they're approaching comics and science fiction not from a place of love for comic books, fantasy, or science fiction. No, they're coming at it as just another job, and we really need someone who loves comics, fantasy, and science fiction to be working in these key positions. When I think of someone who's supposed to be the vice president of content and character development, I would think of someone who has the extensive knowledge of the Marvel Universe, like your Mark Gruenwald had back when he was alive, and someone who had the passion to motivate and teach others like Mark Gruenwald did back in the day. Now, when I think of someone like Mark Gruenwald, that's someone who I would want to be the vice president of content and character development, because they understand the content of a Marvel comic, they understand how to develop the characters in Marvel comics, and they care about Marvel comics enough to bring their best to the table for every comic published at Marvel Comics. That's what I would want for someone who would be running Marvel Comics, in the same way I would want that same type of person doing work at Lucasfilm, because these are the people who are going to make an effort to give us the best product possible. But when it comes down to Disney, Disney thinks that they can just hire a woman for the position, not looking for the best qualified woman based on passion and skill. No, they just thought get somebody with a couple of degrees and that'll be the person to run that division. And we see that in both of these cases, just hiring someone because they have a couple of degrees in work experience and the right political views, all that's leading to these brands doing is falling into decline and literally being run into the ground. And when I take a look at both of these companies, the parallels between them are eerie, because when I take a look at both of them, they're clearly run by females who do not know how to run a division. And what's really disturbing is they want to push these feminist agendas, And when I take a look at Sana Amanat's agenda, she literally wants to take a brand like Marvel, which was created by men for boys and built towards the male reader, and she wants to erase boys by saying that she wants to do something about the boy problem, when the problem is Marvel hired a grossly unqualified woman for the position of being in charge of their content and character development. Because someone who, again, is qualified for this position, again, would be a lifelong comic fan, someone who understood the catalog of the Marvel Universe, someone who understood the characters of the Marvel Universe, and someone who understood what diversity means when you integrate characters into the Marvel Universe. You're looking to push existing characters and you're looking to create new characters, not try to force diverse characters by taking a legendary character like Captain America and shoehorning a black character into a position that they don't belong in, or taking a character like Iron Man, who was established to be Tony Stark, a white male, and shoehorning a black female in that position who never was a fully developed character overall. And that's one of the big problems as related to Marvel's failed diversity initiative, is that it wasn't about diversifying the Marvel Universe, because when it comes down to Rosanna Amanat, she doesn't understand what diversity is as related to trying to diversify a universe. The Marvel Universe was fairly diverse, and the real problem at Marvel was that there were not many creators of color in positions at Marvel or getting access to opportunities at Marvel. And that hasn't really changed overall, even with Rosanna Amanat in charge of content and character development, because as I see it, there are not many black comic creators or comic pros working on Marvel projects. There aren't many Hispanic Marvel creators at Marvel creating comics over there, and there aren't many Asian comic pros over there, and many of those are not there because they just have not been given these opportunities to work on characters based on the content of the work that they produce. No, it's all about putting a black writer on a black character or a Hispanic writer on a Hispanic character, and that's not diversity, that's tokenism. And tokenism is why Marvel is struggling right now, because they're not looking for the qualified person to work with these characters. They're just looking to hire people and put them on characters, not thinking about the organic fit of this writer or their story style or their approach to storytelling, or if this writer is a good fit or if this artist style is a good fit for this character. No, those are things that really seasoned editors and seasoned publishers like myself do. We think about whether this art style is a good fit for a character. Like if you have a character like Daredevil who's dark and moody, you really want a dark and moody style artist. Or you have a character like Spider-Man, you want really a bright and fun artist because that's a good fit for the character. Or you're thinking about a writer whose style is a good fit for a character because you want that writer's style to fit. And these are things that a creative person who has passion is going to think about, especially if they're in an editorial position. A position we really don't have many blacks, Hispanics, or Asians in at Marvel. Because when you look at Marvel, the only person who was there is Sana Amanat, and she's clearly showing, again, she's grossly unqualified for this position, because for her to sit there and talk about turning Marvel into a lifestyle brand shows me that she's trying to deflect from her lack of ability to manage the Marvel catalog and manage the characters in it and create content in it. So she wants to make it a lifestyle brand geared towards her strengths, which are females, instead of making efforts to try to work with the males who primarily buy comics. And this is why she says she needs to fix the boy problem, because she has a problem creating content and characters for male readers. Because when it comes down to these females, you have to understand a lot of times when they can't do the work, they look to deflect, and this is the deflection from your Sana Amanat as related to Marvel. Now, when it's related to Star Wars, your Kathleen Kennedy has pretty much fumbled the football and is just waiting to be terminated, because with Solo, a Star Wars movie, we clearly see that your Kathleen Kennedy's vision for Star Wars has literally destroyed the Star Wars brand. But when I look at both Star Wars and Marvel, both brands have been damaged because of a misplaced need to place diversity where it didn't need to be, and where people were judged by their gender instead of the qualifications they met for the position. And as it related to both Lucasfilm and Star Wars, they needed an executive in charge who had passion for the product and someone who cared for the product. Because when I take a look at DC Comics back in the 1980s, they went out and hired Jeanette Kahn, a incredibly qualified woman who went out of her way to rebuild the DC Comics brand and made the DC Comics brand incredibly competitive. When you take a look at the legacy of Jeanette Kahn, you clearly see a woman who knew what she was doing, earned her position on merit, and literally rebuilt the DC Comics brand into something that was a powerhouse into the mid 1980s all the way to the 1990s. And that shows us that a woman can lead a brand if she comes in with passion, with skill, with heart, and really loves what she's doing. But when you take a look at your Sana Amanat and your Kathleen Kennedy, they clearly show me a pattern related to Disney, and that pattern is hiring a woman and putting her in a position based on her being a woman and not based on her having the qualifications for the position. When it comes down to qualifications for a position, you have to look past the education and the experience, and you have to listen to that person to see if they really want to be there by the things that they say. And when I look at your Sana Amanat, and I look at her background, I look at Kathleen Kennedy's background, they weren't good fits for these brands, and because they were the wrong person for the brand, they wound up sending both of these brands into decline. Now, the person people want to see at Marvel and at Lucasfilm running both brands is someone who loves the characters, loves comics, loves science fiction, loves fantasy, has watched lots of fantasy and science fiction, read lots of comics, and really cares about these characters, maintaining the integrity of these characters, maintaining their mythology, maintaining their lore. This is what comic fans and Star Wars fans want to see in charge of it, because this is the type of person who cares that much that they will go the extra mile towards making sure that Star Wars fans and comic fans get the best comics possible and the best Star Wars movies possible, because they want to enjoy these characters and they want others to enjoy these characters as well. And because they're working on these characters, they want those customers to have the same experience they have watching these characters as they have working with them. That's what I would want to see working at Lucasfilm, at Marvel, that type of individual, because that's the type of individual I am working on my own SJS Direct imprint. When I'm working on my own fantasy and science fiction characters, I always make sure to give my readers the very best as related to storytelling and character development, because I want my readers to have the best experience possible when they pick up an ISIS series book, or a book like The Temptation of John Haynes, or The Man Who Rules the World, or a book in the Spinsterella trilogy. And I want every reader to have the exact same consistent experience from book to book, and I want them to understand that every book that they pick up will be an entry point that they can enjoy, and that they can go either forwards in the series or they can go backwards in the series. And that's something I want my readers to enjoy and experience, and that's what I would believe a qualified person who worked at Marvel or Lucasfilm would do if they were placed in those positions, because that's what both companies need. They really need someone who cares about the product, someone who's passionate about the product, and someone who wants to maintain a standard as related to keeping the characters consistent and keeping the stories consistent from page to page, and someone who really is about making sure that giving people the best comics possible is their agenda, not an agenda based on identity politics or pushing feminist narratives, because when it comes down to comics, they're supposed to be an escape from our problems, not somebody bringing them a problem. Because in business, your goal is to give people a solution to their problems or escape for their problems. And when it comes down to comics, they're supposed to be an escape from people's problems, and there's supposed to be a moment where people can have a little fun. And when I take a look at a Marvel comic, it's just not fun. And when I look at Star Wars, it's just not fun because these two feminists want to push identity politics in a place where it just doesn't belong. If you want to try some of my SJS Direct publications like the ISIS series, the E-Steam series, The Temptation of John Haynes, and the Smith-Storella trilogy, you may do so by clicking the link to Amazon.com in the description box. And if you want to see me make more videos like this, you can donate to my Patreon by clicking the link in the description box. That's all I have to say for this video. You can comment, rate, and subscribe. Now available in paperback and ebook, The Man Who Rules the World. John Haynes must bring together men and gods to overcome a threat that seeks to destroy the planet. The Man Who Rules the World. Now available in paperback and e-readers everywhere.